1. An old coworker works for a misogynist creep, and during the pandemic he got his first PPP. He spread the wealth with all his male employees, including a few who only worked there for a few weeks, years ago. He called all his longtime female employees to say he got a loan of $175,000. He told them, for your safety, you should stay home on unemployment, but if you want PPP money, I will make you come back to work full-time even though we're on lockdown to clean. They asked if the guys were coming in to clean, and he said no, they're not women. They questioned him a lot, thinking he was up to something. He basically said, I want to give the men more, which I cannot do if you take some, so if you take it, I'll pay you the bare minimum, and you're gonna work hard for it, because it wouldn't be right to give you money for doing nothing. He basically forced him to stay on unemployment. Fast forward, the restaurant opens, he brings a few back, 1 guy and 3 girls, and they do well in summer with outside seating. As it gets cold, there's no business, so he applies for a second PPP, and promised everyone some to make up for making nothing in the cold. The girls keep asking as the bills are piling. He keeps saying it never came. Only the women are stressed over the money, and him and the man are chill. As is public info, they looked into it. And aha! He got another $175,000. One girl goes to him crying and says, you got the loan. Please, I can't pay rent. He snapped, I said I never effing got it. Then she overheard him complain to the chef about her, and the chef said fire her. The boss responded by saying he was stuck with her because he used her name on both loans. They all feel screwed over and lost so much because of his false promises. They're asking my advice, but I have no clue. If anyone can help with what recourse they may have, it would be appreciated. She has been there forever and is a great girl and employee and deserves better. Quitting seems like giving up without a fight, and any help or suggestions would be greatly appreciated. Eventually, I went in myself to see what he was like in person. Went in for dinner, requested a different female server. I said I read the great reviews and he went to thank me, but I cut him off about Sherry and her great service. Asked to sit with her. That annoyed him very much. Sat right behind the hostess station. We got to enjoy his constant shit-talking about the servers to a male worker. It was gross. He's like 70 and made lots of gross comments about the very young female guests. I heard about 8 or so guests tell him how great the service was. His response was, okay. WTF. He yelled and slammed things as it got busy. He yelled at both girls often. He was a monster. As I was leaving, I said, thank you, the service was great. Okay. I said, I work in the biz too, and I appreciate when my people get compliments. I said my fish was great, but between you and me, listening to you disparage your hard-working, incredible staff, among other things, was not enjoyable. I said the last thing you'd want would be for someone to record you and put it on social media. Said that type of stuff ends up everywhere, even the news. His face dropped and he said, okay, thank you. What a motherfucker. I got video, just in case it's needed. Of course, 10 minutes after leaving, my friend texted me to stay. I pissed him off and called me a bitch. How dare she speak to me that way in my place? Good. I was polite but forward. He clearly doesn't like assertive women. The female servers are getting together this week to contact a lawyer. 2. I've worked in hospitality for 7 years now. Started when I was 16, so not a lot bothers me at this point. However, this one table in particular that came in last night has been on my mind all day. FYI, I'm in Australia, so hospitality is quite different here. Anyway, yesterday my coworker got a call and it went something like this. We tried your restaurant in another location and we were very disappointed. So we're coming to try yours tonight. It better not be disappointing because we're driving half an hour to come and try it. When it gets close to the reservation, the woman rings back again. She complains to the same coworker that the few parking spaces outside of the restaurant were taken, and goes on to say, it's disgraceful you would put a restaurant here and not think of disabled people. Obviously, we didn't build the bloody parking lot, but okay. She also tells us that her husband is disabled and in a wheelchair. We are located underneath a hotel, but not affiliated with it. Nonetheless, my coworker actually spoke to the manager of the hotel and arranged these people's parking, with the notion that one of them was disabled. However, when they do arrive, they did not have a wheelchair. I don't want to make any assumptions about people's health, but I will say I saw this man get up multiple times with no problem. Mind you, there are so many car parks not even 100 meters away from us, so it's not a far walk in the first place. Cut to when I go to ask them if they're ready to order. The first thing the woman says to me is that she refuses to pay an extra $1 for her beer because she came here at night. We have cheaper beers during lunch to encourage more business, as we are pretty quiet at lunchtime. I take their order, and they are surprisingly civil. The food comes, we check on them, and say that everything is good. Me, thinking we've dodged a bullet, volunteer to take their payment when they're ready to leave. This is when the following conversation ensued. How was everything tonight, guys?
It was okay.
Oh, was everything all right?
Actually, no. We ordered the Indignation vegan curry and it didn't have a single pea in it.
Oh no, sorry about that. You could have told someone when they checked on you and we would have remade that for you guys.
Well, I don't think it's fair, because you should have told me that it didn't have peas in it when it was stated on your menu that it did. If you'd told me it didn't, I wouldn't have ordered it.
I check with the kitchen and come back. I'm so sorry, I did just check with the chef, and he's only just told me now that they ran out of peas tonight. Was everything else okay tonight?
Everything else was good, but I don't think it's fair that I have to pay for a dish when it wasn't what was advertised. I think it's very unthoughtful for a restaurant to only serve potatoes to people that are vegan.
Mind you, the curry she ordered was full of other vegetables. All that was missing was the sprinkling of peas.
It's like ordering fish and chips and only getting the chips in it.
I'm mentally facepalming over the stupidest comparison I've ever heard. I'm sorry about that. I'm vegan too, so I understand where you're coming from. I can offer you guys a discount on the meal you weren't happy with. Is that okay?
We want to speak to the manager then, because it's not fair that I have to pay for it when I didn't get the peas in it that were advertised.
At this point, I'm fed up, and we have no manager there, so I grabbed the chef who ended up just taking it off the bill. I don't agree with giving people like this everything they want, but it was half an hour past closing, and everyone was tired and just wanted this to be over with. The worst part about it is, they left a horrible review about how disappointed they were with their potato dish that didn't have peas in it. Truly goes to show that 100 things can go right, and still some customers will solely focus on the negatives. Safe to say, I will never look at a packet of peas the same way again. 3. I work part-time at a hotel as a banquet server. We had a massive event last night that was for charity. Over 500 people. It was a 5-course meal with 4 wine pairings. I had 5 tables with 10 people at each. I was teamed up with one of the high school students that works there part-time on the weekends, so that he could serve the food and I could serve the wine. Before the event, we went around to every single table at least 10 times to make sure everything was in place. The event starts and I pour the first wine. Whenever I'm pouring the wine and going around the table, I keep a count in my head of how many wines I pour, just to make sure that I get everyone. I pour the first round and set the first course, and as I'm coming around to pour the wine for the next course, my high school coworker told me someone was getting mad at him about not getting wine. I went over to the table and asked her if I could help her. She was sitting there with a glass in front of her that clearly had wine in it. There was wine in the bottom of the glass. She told me it was empty, even though anyone with eyes could see that it was not. I apologized to her and told her that the first wine was gone, which is a lie. We only had enough there for everybody to have a tasting. You could tell she was super annoyed with me. She kept arguing that she didn't get any, but what can I do, right? I just kept telling her I was sorry, and offered more of the second wine, but she didn't want that. They get their second course, and we clear the plates, and I'm coming around with the third wine, and her husband tells me he didn't get the second wine. As I'm sure you can imagine, I was very careful when I poured the second wines to make sure they both got some. The second white wine was a red wine, and you could very clearly see the red in the bottom of the glass as he's telling me he didn't get any. I went to the back and looked, and there was just none of it left. I came out and told him, and he's like,
"Okay, give me some more bread."
Again, they only give us enough bread for everyone at the event to have one piece. I don't make up the rules, I just serve the food. He was getting visibly upset when I told him that I didn't have the bread. I just walked away and went to the back and stood there for a minute. I went back out and another guy at the table was like, "I want some more of the third wine." I went in the back and we had some and I brought it out to him. I went to pour it and he said, "I'll give you $20 to leave the wine on the table." My manager has told us many times that we cannot do that. I told him no, and he kind of just looked at me like he was surprised that someone would actually tell him no to some money. I walked away and waited on my other tables. At the end of the night, another couple came from the wine table and gave me a $50 tip and said they were sorry that I had to put up with their drunk friends. I ended the night with a lot of good tips, but holy fuck, it's a charity wine tasting event, not a wine guzzling event. Control yourself, right? 4. I currently work at a family-owned diner that is adjacent to a vintage-style motel owned by the same family. The diner and the motel have differing hours, so people who stay there are made aware that they are not guaranteed breakfast from our diner during their stay, depending on the day. We are open and there are guests. It's pretty typical the first customers of the morning will be the guests, who usually are very nice people. We have outdoor seating only, as our 1950s steel portable diner only has 11 seats outside, not to mention how absolutely claustrophobic it is in there. We basically use the entire diner as our kitchen, which works well for us. Before we got a gate that locked, people would rock up and grab a seat as early as 20 minutes before opening, which forced us to either make people get up from their tables so we could clean them, or be forced to clean around them. We had been reprimanded by the health department for allowing customers to sit at dirty tables before opening, as it's a health risk and a liability. Now, the only people that ever try to sit early are guests from the motel, since they're already locked inside the outdoor lot with us anyway. I've had very little issue letting people know we aren't open yet, and they usually just go back to their room to wait. One day, though, a man showed up an hour before we were open. The other servers and I had literally just clocked in. He took it upon himself to grab a chair off the stacks, pull it up to a dirty table that he dusts off, and sits down. I go outside and the conversation goes something like this. "Hello, sir. Sorry, but we don't open until 10, and we need to clean the area before people can sit." "Oh, I know you guys aren't open yet, I'm just waiting." "I understand, but unfortunately we cannot have guests in the dining area before it's clean. It's a health hazard. There are other spaces to sit, not in the dining area if you'd like to wait." At this point, the man starts to stand up and wave me off, to which I try to act apologetic that I'm asking him to move, before he finally chucks his dad's sunglasses at me when he turns to yell at me. "Oh no, you don't have to worry about me. I think it's extremely rude and unprofessional of you to be running me off like this. I just wanted to grab a table early." I try to maintain my professionalism and reiterated that once again, we can get in trouble for allowing that, and there are other places for him to sit and wait that's not in our dining area. He continues to storm off, mumbling profanities towards me, before turning around and shouting at the top of his lungs. "Who am I bothering? What am I bothering? I just wanted to sit early and listen to my podcast, and you can't not be a rude bitch first thing this morning." By this point, I'm baffled and confused as to why this grown-ass man is throwing a tantrum at 9 in the a.m. I look across the lot and see my manager watching the situation closely. But I don't have it in me to care, so I yell back, "I'm sorry, but what kind of restaurant lets you sit down at a nasty table an hour before opening? If you want breakfast, you can take your sorry ass somewhere else." He scoffs in shock and very petulantly shouts at me that we've permanently lost a customer. To which I respond, "Thank God. I was afraid I'd have to serve you when we were actually open." That man turned bright red and literally threw his cell phone at me from a couple of feet away, before flipping me the bird and storming off. My manager walks over, says she witnessed the whole thing and that I'm not in trouble, but I will need to explain myself when the owner shows up if the guest decides to complain. He never did complain, and he actually never came back for his phone, I brought it up to the owner a week later, and he basically said that the guest was living in his car in our parking lot for a week, before he decided to offer the man an unbooked room for a low rate out of sympathy. He overstayed his welcome and never paid, and luckily for both of us, we lost an unwanted customer. 5. I work in a semi-rural town that's also a retirement town, at a certain chain restaurant featuring a barrel. To preface this tale, I've been there nearly 2 years, so I have a good bit of experience with handling a larger section if need be. Our GM knows this, and she's also pretty hands-on if it's busy. For being in a town like this one, our team is pretty diverse too, I would say. One of the managers is openly gay, as am I, and a few other servers. You'll see why this is important soon. It was a typical busy Sunday. My section was a couple tables bigger than some other servers on this day, and I had a section with one of the large top tables in it as well. I noticed the two-top got sat at a table right outside my section at one point. 2 women. I sort of suspect they're lesbians, but I don't know for sure. They have that kind of look, but better not to assume. It was still morning, but I thought at the time all the other servers had arrived, so I didn't immediately think of greeting the table. A few minutes passed, maybe 10, and I noticed they still had their menus. So I asked the GM if that was supposed to be my table. She was running the floor, helping hosts assign tables and seat. She said yes, and that she meant to tell me but forgot, because the server for that section wasn't actually there yet. No problem. I go and greet the table, apologize no one has been there, but don't imply they were forgotten or anything of the sort. Basically, I act like whoever was supposed to have the table dropped the ball, etc. It was a pretty normal service for them, got their drink order and food order at the same time, because, of course, they had decided on everything by then. Kitchen wasn't too slow. Brought out their food, checked on them a few times, normal. At one point they asked a different server if they could get hash browns added, which they got quickly, because the other server found me and I put them straight in. At the end of their meal, I asked if they wanted separate checks or not. I suspected not, because they're probably a couple. But I've learned not to assume and just ask most times to save myself time. They sat there for maybe 15-ish more minutes after they were done eating. I checked on them a couple of times to make sure they didn't need boxes or refills or anything. Finally, they got up, and I saw them talking to the GM for several minutes, because I was curious, and she's usually fine with telling us what a table possibly complained about. I asked her what they said after they were gone. She said she'd tell me in a minute, and that it was weird. Oh boy. I got a small bit of downtime after a few minutes and asked her again, and she told me that I apparently didn't want to wait on them because they're gay. They grew up in this town and know how gay people are treated, and they felt disrespected, etc., etc. And also tried to claim that I never checked on them even once, and on and on. The hilarious thing here is my GM knows I'm gay and that I have a wife, so I can't be discriminating against them. And was also basically standing right by my section the entire time, while helping the hosts, and saw me checking on them. She basically laughed at their claims in the end, flat out told them that was ridiculous because I'm also gay, and that she watched me give them excellent service. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, episode 200. Yes, we made it to 200 episodes. Well done me. I'm patting myself on the back. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video, and all the folks who let me use their stories in the preceding 200 videos. That's a lot of stories. We're talking thousands. Alrighty, I don't think we have any other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question comes from my lovely partner Linux. What is your favorite so bad it's good movie? You know the ones. I'm going to pick, I've been watching recently the Evil Bong movies. So I'm going to mention them as being the most recent. And they're clearly the people making them know they're making silly movies, but in a way that everyone's in on the joke, so you're in on the joke as well, and you're having a good time. Plus, Tommy Chong was in the first film, and it's always nice to see him pop up in movies. What are some of yours? I look forward to seeing your answers in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.